The Happy Little King. King Bert was very shy. When visitors came to the castle, he hid inside.
Where's the king?
Bert, dear, where are you?
We've come to see the king. To hide even better, King Bert drank some water mixed with shrinking powder. He got smaller and smaller and smaller.
I think it's working. Yes, it's working. Just right.
Now King Bert was happy. He could enjoy all the fun without being seen. Can you find King Bert?
I hope you're enjoying your dinner.
This is delicious.
Good.
Oh, you found me.
The end.
Sometimes heroes do big things, like saving kingdoms. But my favorite stories are about heroes who do little things, like saving bugs from getting squashed. If something funny happened at your house, I bet a story about the same thing happening in the castle would be even funnier.
Try the fable thing. Write a story with animals that teaches a lesson. And remember, no people allowed.
Make up a story about someone that no one in the kingdom can see, except you.
Stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end, just like life. Write a story about a king from the time he's born until he's an old man.
Look up a word you don't know in the encyclopedia and write a story about it.
Write a story about a gargoyle. Use the encyclopedia if you need help.
Switching things around is a good way to give a boring idea some life. Put the peasants in the castle and stick the king in a cottage.
Here's a trick. Take an old saying like, beauty is only skin deep, and make up a story about it. Write two different stories, each with a harp, a shovel, and a dancing bear.
How come dragons are always the bad guys? It's your job to write a story with a dragon hero.
I like to make up stories about a character who can do something that no one else can do, like talk to animals.
Here's an idea. Try making up a story without any words.
What would you do if you went to sleep in your own bed and woke up in a castle? Don't tell me, write it down.
I like to write fairy tales and stick myself into the story. Try it with Cinderella.
Poems are what I like to write best. Usually they rhyme, but not all the time.
How about this? Write a story about twin sisters. One is good, and one is bad.
How come most stories are about kings, queens, and knights? Why not try writing a story about the cook for once?
Try writing a story that all happens on one page. Lots of times I'm happy. And then I'm sad. And then I'm happy again. Good stories go up and down like that too. Try one. I like ghost stories, especially when they're about funny ghosts.
Whenever I get tired of reading about royalty, I write a story about the greatest king in the universe. Me.
Writing about friendship is always good, especially if the friends are a weird mix. That reminds me of a poor prince and a rich peasant who were best friends and... Go ahead, you tell it.
People in a story are usually more interesting if they're not perfect, like a brave knight who can't ride a horse.
Pick a title from a book you've never read, then make up a story that fits that title.
Castle tour. The word castle comes from the Latin word meaning fortress. A castle was a fortress that offered safety, but it was also a business place, a center for the army, and a workplace for large numbers of people. Along with the royal or noble family, many of the workers, soldiers, servants, and their families made homes inside the castle walls. Animals lived there too. Early castles were made from mud and wood. Later, they were built from stone, which offered better protection from fire, enemies, and bad weather. Castles included towers, walls, and small and large buildings, grassy areas, and moats. Castle rooms were quite plain and had little furniture. They were often crowded with people, and there was little privacy. Wherever there was space, food and weapons were stored. Keep. The safest place in the castle was a stone tower called the keep. The king or lord and his family lived in the keep. Sometimes, for safety, the keep staircase was in a separate building. A small drawbridge had to be lowered in order to enter the keep. The keep's lowest level was used to store food and weapons. The Great Hall was sometimes on the second level. It was a place for people to gather. On the third floor was the most comfortable room of the castle. It was called the solar and was used as a sitting room and bedroom. A fireplace was built into a wall of the solar. Chest. Chests were one of the most common pieces of furniture in the Middle Ages. They were very simple to make by pegging together 6 pieces of wood. Wealthy people often had fancy carved chests. They were used to store clothing, tools, tableware, armor, and jewels. Sometimes chests had heavy locks which were opened with iron keys. Chests were great for the traveling life of nobles. They could be quickly packed and carried off. They also made handy benches. Gargoyles. Many castles had decorated water spouts which stood out from the castle roof. Spouts decorated like the heads of strange creatures were called gargoyles. Water drained off the roof through the gargoyle's mouth. Often the gargoyles looked half animal and half human. Other gargoyles looked like scary birds. Some gargoyles were carved to make fun of enemies. A stonemason could make these gargoyles look weird or scary. You can still see gargoyles today on the top of large old buildings. Grand bed. In the Middle Ages, one of the most prized possessions was a bed. Beds were so rare and valuable that they were often listed in a noble person's will. The grand bed had ropes supporting the mattress. Some had a roof called a tester. Curtains hung from this roof and could be drawn to keep away the cold air. Servants and children often slept on a lower bed called a truckle or trundle bed. During the daytime, this lower bed could be pushed under the grand bed. Great Hall. The Great Hall was the center of castle life. In the early castles, everyone ate and slept in the Great Hall around a central fire. Castles built later had bedrooms, but the Great Hall was still an important gathering place for both work and play. Celebrations, feasts, and entertainment took place in the Great Hall. When a meal was served, servants set up trestle tables and brought in benches. Sometimes the walls of the Great Hall were decorated with tapestries. The floor was covered with straw and herbs or dried flowers. These helped hide the smells of all the things that were under the straw. Trestle table. A trestle table was simply a long, wide board which was laid on top of 2 or more supports. These supports were called trestles or sawhorses. The table was then covered with a linen cloth. After the meal, the trestle table was taken apart and stacked out of the way. Trestle tables were often very long so many people could sit at them. If several tables were needed for a feast, one table was set up on a raised platform. The most important guests would sit at this table along with the king and queen or the lord and lady of the castle. Benches. There were few chairs in the Middle Ages. Only important or wealthy people owned them. A large fancy chair used by royalty or nobility was called a throne. Most people sat on benches, stools, or on the floor. Benches were easy to make. They were used in many rooms throughout the castle. Benches might be made of fine wood and have fancy carving, or made very simply from rough wood. Sometimes benches and chairs had cloth cushions. For feasts and celebrations, benches were set up alongside trestle tables in the Great Hall. Tapestries. Tapestries are cloth wall hangings with pictures on them. In the Middle Ages, tapestries were used to decorate the drab castle walls and to keep cold air from coming through the walls. Scenes from legends, history, Bible stories, or mythology often decorated the tapestries. Other designs included coats of arms, forests, unicorns, and flowers. Tapestries were hung with loops so they could be taken down and moved. Servants were assigned the job of shaking the tapestries to get rid of dust and fleas. Some of these rare tapestries from the Middle Ages hang in museums today. Kitchen. Some of the first castle kitchens were built in the courtyard, away from the living areas. This was done because of the danger of fire. Once brick and stone were used as building materials, the kitchen became part of the main building. Because 2 hot meals a day had to be prepared for many people, the kitchen was a large, busy place. To put a meal together, it took all sorts of workers, including a baker, a butcher, a sauce cook, a brewer, a butler, a carver, and a taster. Kitchens were hot because fires in the huge fireplaces and brick ovens burned all day and often all night. Dungeon. The lord and sometimes the lady of a castle held court to try people accused of crimes. Some castles had dungeons where prisoners were kept until their trials. The dungeon was usually on the lowest floor. It was cold, damp, and dark. Prisoners were chained to prevent escape. The famous Marco Polo was thrown into a dungeon in Italy. He passed the time telling stories of his travels. Another prisoner wrote the stories down. These stories told of faraway lands, paper money, and huge jewels. Well. Every castle had its own well. The well needed to be in a safe place in case the castle was attacked. It was usually located in or near the keep, so it could not be easily poisoned by an enemy. Some castles stored water on an upper level with pipes to carry it to each of the floors below. People who lived in towns used wells too. The towns were dirty and full of garbage. Often these wells became so dirty that the water was unsafe. Because of this, many people paid water carriers to deliver fresh water from outside the town. Drawbridge. Many castles were surrounded by water-filled ditches called moats. Drawbridges crossed the moats, allowing entry into the castle. These drawbridges were large, heavy platforms with hinges and chain supports. The drawbridge was pulled up over the entrance at night. The drawbridge was also pulled up when an enemy was near. The chief porter, who lived in a room over the entrance, was in charge of operating the drawbridge. He kept a close eye on all who came near and made sure only friends, family, and workers were allowed to cross. Tournament field. Tournaments, or mock battles, were popular entertainment during the Middle Ages. The tournament field was located in the castle courtyard or in a clearing near the castle. People traveled great distances for the tournaments, which lasted a week or more. Rows of brightly colored tents housed the knights and other guests. Viewing stands were set up and gaily decorated. The tournament field was a festive sight, both during the day when the contests were held and in the evening when everyone danced, visited from tent to tent, feasted, and sang. Peasants' home. Peasants, some of the poorest people in the Middle Ages, built their own homes. These were 1- or 2-room houses for the peasants and their animals. The homes were made from wood and twigs. They were held together with a mixture of wet clay and chopped straw, which was padded on both sides of the wall. Glass was too expensive, so windows were simply holes in the wall. The door was sometimes split in the middle. The top part could be opened to let fresh air in, and the bottom shut to keep animals from running out of the house. Forest. Hunting in the forest was a favorite sport of royalty and nobility. They hunted for deer, wild boar, rabbits, badgers, wildcats, and all sorts of birds. Peasants were not allowed to hunt in the forest. They could not kill a wild animal even if it was ruining the crops. If a peasant was caught hunting animals on the nobleman's property, he was accused of poaching and was punished. Wood from the forest provided building material. Wood fires were used for cooking, heating, and light. Town. In the late Middle Ages, towns sprang up and began to grow. As the land around the towns became scarce, people started building their shops and homes close together and several stories tall. People threw their garbage in the narrow, dirty streets. At night, the streets were so dark, people carried torches or lanterns. People lived and worked in their shops. For example, a shoemaker made shoes on the lower floor and lived with his family on the top floors. At the front of his shop, he hung his guild sign and displayed shoes to sell. Guilds. Many shops in the towns were run by craftsmen who belonged to guilds. There were guilds for bakers, tailors, leather workers, goldsmiths, weavers, and many other trades. Guilds helped set rules and prices. Guild members who broke the rules were punished. For example, if a member of the winemakers' guild was caught selling watery wine, the bad wine might be poured over his head. Often guild signs hung outside the shops. A fish for a fish seller, a boot for a shoemaker. These picture signs were helpful because most people could not read.
Okay, I know there's no way in the world that we have time for this, but what if we took the smart art gradient reacting stuff that we used in Thinking Things 1 and wrapped that into the storyteller things that we've been wanting to do forever and made a kid's ebook maker?
Hey, give us a couple of months and we'll produce something incredible.
I've been working on this project so hard that I've actually gone home, gone to bed, and had dreams about this product.
You know, what we want to do is give kids the ability to make incredibly beautiful, amazing things, even if they don't have any artistic talent, even if they draw like I do.
This is going to be a great product.
Excuse me, we're out of network space.
This has been the most amazing,
incredible,
amazing group effort I've ever been involved with.
Sounds like a cool product.
Did you compile that file yet?
That was your file to compile.
No, that's your file and you need to compile it.
So what you're saying then is that the Mac version is in QA, right?
Imagination Express ist der absolute Wahnsinn, Leute.
Next time, why don't you check out all the files before making the build?
Let's see the schedule.
Minds and hearts and creative spirit just wrapped into a wonderful package to give to kids.
It's on your directory.
No, but it's your property. It's got your name on it. Look in the header.
No, it doesn't. You made the last changes.
No, look at the style. It's all your style. It's your file.
Yes, but you can match my style.
Okay,